obviously you're talking to a guy who's going to be firmly in the Crowley camp, like. But I'm just saying to you, my suspicion would be that they're going to retain Sam Prendergast in number 10. Huh?
You said you would as well.
Well, here's the thing, right? No, I would play Crowley, but Prendergast is going to start, right? Because I'm thinking, why would they drop him? They started him against Australia, which was a massive game, because had they lost that match only weeks earlier, they lost to New Zealand, and you know yourself, there would have been a huge furore after that if they had lost to both New Zealand and Australia in the same month, right? So Prendergast starts, now Crowley comes on. We were at the game. He was excellent when he came on. Prendergast was good. But that went well. Subsequently, Prendergast has been fabulous for Leinster. Crowley has had his up and down moments. He was superb against Northampton. His other games not so good. But Crowley has pretty much been fantastic. So I'm thinking from an Irish coaching point of view, why would you change it? What's the reason? And that's why I'm not surprised that, according to Rory O'Connor in the Irish Independent this morning, that they're leaning towards Prendergast over Crowley.
Mike Sherry's point was essentially that the Australia game was an opportunity to test and see if Prendergast is at test level. He passed the test, but that he's not necessarily the incumbent. That was like that sequence of games is over, and this is a new sequence of games, and you're deciding at the moment what your pecking order is. And then maybe they think Sam Prendergast is ahead of Crowley in the pecking order, which is essentially what they're saying if they pick him for this game.
Yeah.
And so it's his jersey then to lose. This whole and look, maybe that drives Crowley on to incredible heights, and he plays his best rugby with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and they turn that into a chippy thing from now on.
Here's hypothetical for you now. Would it be better if either Crowley or Prendergast were such the obvious choice for 10, that there wasn't the alternative to them, and the quality was much lower beneath, so that we could focus on, well, that person is our out half because we have benefited from having a definitive out half in the last couple of decades? At time, O'Gara was the definitive one for a while, and then Sexton was for a while.
I would say no, and I think that
this choice is good, right?
Well, and also competition is good. Competition was good for David Humphreys. Competition was good for Ronan O'Gara, and the fact that there was no competition in the end wasn't good for Johnny Sexton, because like Sexton's performance in the final game of the World Cup wasn't at the same level as it had been previously because he was so old. But to counter that, what out half has played well in a Rugby World Cup quarter-final for Ireland ever? But
if you're using that example specifically.
Not Sexton in the ones that he played in. Like, he played okay for most of the game against New Zealand. I'm not saying it was a bad performance, but certainly they needed somebody to come off the bench.
They could have, yeah. And
with 20 minutes left to go, given his age profile, and they didn't. And I think we are like, the career was always at the same level. Like, it wasn't. There were ups and downs, and there are naturally going to be ups and downs in a 20-year career. So that's not a criticism, but the fact that there was nobody to replace him wasn't actually good. And that's your argument, is that, he was the only one, and that was fine, and there was never any doubts about it. But that didn't help.
Yeah, okay. So I agree, right? So we're in a great position here, and you're saying if they go for Prendergast against England, then okay, he is the preferred choice at 10 definitively.
And it's very hard. It's very, very hard for Crowley to get back in the team.
I disagree with that.
Barring an injury.
Because they are so close in levels and opinion of them that it wouldn't take much at all for Crowley to get back in. It would be but a footnote eventually that Prendergast started ahead of Crowley against England in the first Six Nations game of 2025. Do you remember, the whole point of this, I thought, was to prepare for the 2027 World Cup. This is all training.
Well, look, we think that, but they think that they need to win the tournament because they're bonused on wins.
What do you think is different from the fan perspective and hope and expectation versus the internal camp?
Of course it is. Of course it is, because you don't get to the World Cup for another 2.5 years, and so in the meantime, like, you can't be thinking, we're going to be grand if we. They have to analyse the trends in world rugby to make sure that whatever. So England have gone with their different back row, right? That's a slightly left field selection from Borthwick. Their Ireland selectors are going to see that and think, okay, well, do we stick with exactly what we were going to do? Or now that they've shown their hand, great. Even Borthwick is like, I'm sure Paul Collins is going to go after our line out because we don't have one of the line out jumpers playing in the back row that we could have.
Okay.
We had them on the bench in case our line out's getting destroyed.
Yeah.
So the whole, of course they're obsessed with building depth for the World Cup.
Yes.
But they're far more obsessed with winning this game this week.
Yeah. And look, and I know Anna Caplice is on the line now, and maybe interesting to hear Anna's thoughts on this. But I remember, after the World Cup quarter-final defeat against New Zealand, we were all talking about you got to build for the next World Cup. It's all about the next World Cup, and here we are now with this amazing option at 10.
Anna Caplice, good morning to you.
Well, lads, how are you?
How are you getting on?
Grand. Everyone's stressing about this 10. Who's going to play at 10? And I tell you, I agree with that. I think in a few weeks' time, we'll have forgotten these conversations. We'll have much more to chew on in a few weeks' time. But it's amazing the amount of speculation. It's really interesting.
Which parts of it do you find most interesting?
For me, it's all about how it's going to be managed. And I think that when we finally see the team that we've all been waiting for, and we see who gets the 10, it's not right, he's out, he's in, he's the preferred, that's it, that's the way it's going to be. One takes the bench and impact position, and one takes the start. It's all about how that's managed, where it's a huge opportunity for any player coming off the bench. It's almost more impactful in ways because we've seen how closely games get closed out. Last kick of a game can be so huge and can swing a game and also a tournament and also a Grand Slam or not, as we saw last year. But to have both players, it can be very, I'm sure this is, they block out as much of the outside noise as possible, but it can be so attritional mentally, that they're this speculation all the time, who's better. The thing is, they're both good enough to do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're so close to each other, and the fact that it seems we'll see that Prendergast might be getting the nod, he's surrounded by his club players there. I think Jack Crowley would have to be streets ahead to take the place of someone who fits naturally into that backline. And when it comes to, this selection that we see, one off the bench, one starting, how one impacts the game or the other, I feel like the outside noise, we shouldn't get so hands in the air, throwing hands in the air. We're so blessed and so lucky to have this, that there doesn't need to be this, narrative that we've been looking Ireland to have as well, just 110 driving the show without too much challenge around him. Now we've got a different picture with us. We don't have to be throwing our hands in the air. This is new for us. It's new for us to navigate and to learn. And there's no he's only playing because he's Leinster, or he's, the Munster players want Crowley to start. It's all about how it's going to be managed, from a mental side, prepping these young players, still reassuring them that they're both good enough, but that there's only one jersey, and sometimes luck is with you, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. But that's the thing, Anna, isn't it? Is it's not irrelevant who starts this game against England, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Like you say, there's going to be, whoever doesn't start will be the finisher in the game, almost certainly. And that's really what it's about. It's that strength and depth. And having said all that, Anna, who do you think is going to start 10?
Because of the reason I've just said there now, in terms of them both being kind of neck and neck. And then you turn around and you put a Munster fly half into a Leinster, almost fully Leinster backline. We'll see how Bundy Aki goes and where he fits in. It just kind of wouldn't really make sense, especially if Ireland are looking to play like Leinster, to put Crowley in there. I'm sorry to all the Munster fans who are listening. I absolutely love Jack Crowley, and I think he's so exciting. And Munster fans have, although sometimes you have to kind of watch through your hands because there's kind of a high risk, high reward play about him. It's so exciting for him to watch, and he's produced some unbelievable moments for Munster, even in just the recent few matches. I think Ireland will go with Prendergast.
Can I just posit something here? There is a world in which the prize for not being in the starting team is not being in the squad. If you go to the 6-2 split.
You think you're on folly?
We went with the 6-2 split in the opening fixture last year against France. Obviously, it worked really well. We haven't always done it since. In fact, I'd say we've done it less often since. And I'd be surprised if Easterby was doing this. But you never know. In that case, right, it's more than likely Frawley because he can play more positions.
I don't know.
I'm just
Anna,
putting that out there.
know,
we haven't spoken about this at all. I haven't heard it talked about, but if there is a 6-2 split, there's no guarantee that the non-starting 10 is in the matchday squad.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, what do you think?
I think Frawley's probably, raging about this whole conversation as well. That there only seems to be 2 names in the hat now. Like, he must be absolutely trading the house down, because he's like, well, check this kind of a thing. And it's probably very... That kind of worries me, because I want both 10s that we're speaking about, Prendergast and Crowley. I want both of them to be reassured of how good they are, and give them both like the moments. It is a possibility, definitely, that if you're not starting, you're out of the squad. But again, kind of, it's all about how it's going to be managed. Like, how do you, like, if you look at England, I've been like screaming at England to build their team around Marcus Smith the last years, because I think he's just, outstanding, and they've been, pulling and dragging, and he's been in and he's been out, and a lot of, again, throwing the hands in the air around selection around him. But I think they need to build their team around him, because I think he's such a phenomenal player. How would Ireland then manage that? You've got 2, if not more, potential world-class out-halves, and how do you do it? How do you manage it? How do you get them all both to reach, both, or 3 or 4 of them, whatever, to reach their potential by giving them enough game time, playing the game right with them, mentally, impact player or not, out of squad or not, into the squad, reassuring them that they're good enough even though they're not being selected. It all comes down, it's interesting for Easterby, and then, handing the keys back to Andy Farrell next year. How is it all going to go? It's a really interesting time for Ireland.
I think that's an excellent point. And to be honest, that's why I'd be picking Crowley myself. Just looking back, Ireland-England last year, Twickenham, obviously you mentioned Marcus Smith. He has that last second drop goal which wins the game for them and prevents us from doing the slam. 6-2 bench for that one, 6-2 bench for the France game. Now in the November internationals it kind of went away from it, but you wouldn't be terribly surprised. The November internationals are time for experiments. He doesn't have Craig Casey on the bench, so we know Murray is going to be on the bench. I actually think that, now that I've thought about it for more than 3 seconds, that there's a strong chance there's a 6-2 split. And maybe he puts Crowley on the bench in that case, because Crowley can actually come on and you can shift Prendergast around a bit.
Now, that's detrimental to the person who's not starting, if that happens.
Which?
Out of the squad completely.
Yeah, but that's
But I understand, yeah. Look, if you're going 6-2, then it's very limiting in the backs if one of the 2 is an out half.
But there's probably a world in which you can put Crowley on the bench in a 6-2 split, and you think he's got the game to, and you've got a bit of flexibility in other spots. Now, sorry, Anna, the other thing is that there's strong speculation that actually it's going to be Bundy starting. So that whole, it's just the Leinster backline thing, that's actually not going to be the case.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair enough too. And the way I feel about it now, and when you look at the squad in general, and even Bundy, just how outstanding he was at the World Cup. And I know we're still digging up old wounds when we talk about the World Cup, but it is relevant because we have to learn from that. Like, does Bundy Aki, how long can he keep his form for? I'm interested to see how good he can be in this Six Nations. So yeah, and I love him, and everyone loves watching him, and it gives that, huge connection to Connacht, and like gives the Connacht fans an extra reason to be extra involved in the tournament, which is really important for all the provinces. I'd be happy to see Bundy Aki in there, because then it does undermine the points that I just made. Oh, the Leinster backline, which we don't want to start saying about Ireland. Well, we'll just put in a few token here and there. Like, Bundy Aki deserves that spot. He's, my God, been putting his hand up for it for so long, playing so well. I just wonder how long he can keep it going for. He's just, it's amazing.
Why then, Anna? It's really hard to argue against James Lowe and Mac Hansen, but there are reasons. Like, Lowe's just back, played very well for Leinster last week, and Hansen had the ban, and he's back, and he's playing. He's kind of getting himself into form. However, Calvin Nash has been outstanding recently, and November was very tough for Nash from the national perspective. Is there an argument to have Nash starting against England?
Yeah, there is. I think Ireland have missed Hansen as well, or had missed him when he was out, and I think he's really only building back up to his full 100%, like 100 kilometres an hour, like whatever he can reach. I think that can't be overlooked. That's the only reason I think Nash has a bit more time to kind of bubble and to cook, and he has been doing so well. My God, for Munster, he's been such a standout player. I'd be happy with either, to be honest. I feel a little bit disappointed for Hansen. I just think he's so exciting for Ireland. But again, either option is brilliant. And I'm looking at that now between Hansen and Nash. I think James Lowe is nailed down. I think he's just phenomenal. I'd be happy with either between Nash and Hansen, and then giving kind of like the similar 10 debate we've just been having, giving the other, if that's how they decide to do it, like a chance to come in and absolutely play the house down when they get their shot. It's a little bit of a different dynamic when we're talking about a winger coming in and making an impact as opposed to the 10 to steer the team. So I'd be happy with either from a Munster perspective. Like, I'd love Nash to be in there, and then from a Hansen supporter perspective, I'd love to see him back out there at his best.
Anna, the Lions captain issue is how many of the English papers are framing this. It's Maro Itoje versus Caelan Doris. Obviously, it helps that England now have a head coach who's not criticising Maro Itoje's leadership the way Eddie Jones was when Eddie Jones was, checks notes, his coach. Which is, obviously Borthwick really likes him. I think Maro Itoje is a phenomenal player. Really hate when he's playing against the team that you're cheering for because he's so annoying. He's so brilliant. And, there's definitely a case for the Ireland head coach picking somebody who isn't Irish to captain the team. And yet, Caelan Doris is kind of cresting into territory where he could be the World Rugby Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree that he has the potential to be World Rugby Player of the Year. In terms of Lions captaincy, I think he still has a little bit to go. I think the Six Nations will be key. It's in some ways a little bit unfortunate that this is the first fixture. It would be nice to see it kind of a little bit later in the tournament where we'll kind of get an understanding of how Caelan Doris is leading, because we've seen kind of really kind of brash actions from Doris on the pitch, which have been surprising. But it's all about learning, and even him kind of getting under referee skin and stuff at times. But I think he's still got a little bit to go. This Itoje captaincy is great. I'm delighted for him because I absolutely agree with you. I hate him so much when he plays against Ireland. He's so annoying. He can ruin anything that you're trying to do because he's just such a workhorse. Really kind of calm character. I'm interested to see how he deals with referees, how he speaks to them, how he deals with big moments. I think he'll handle it really well, and I think he could definitely put his hand up for the Lions captaincy. We'll see how this weekend goes, but I don't think it's a matter of we'll see who wins this weekend or who wins the small battles on the pitch or with the ref or whatever, and then he'll take the captaincy. It could work out that way, but I don't think we hang our hat on this match because it's a big tournament to come, and I'm excited for both players, but especially Maro Itoje, especially like you say, he's been kind of criticised and his leadership hadn't been appreciated. It's nice to see that now. It's nice to see England take a different view on it. Let him be captain, let him lead from the front and drive them on. I hate him so much on the field because he's so good and can disrupt anything for any team at any stage.
There's one other thing about the back row I wanted to get your opinion on. Jack Conan obviously was unavailable for the tour to South Africa, and that was one of the first times that we would have really seen Tadhg Beirne in the back row for Ireland on a consistent basis. And then obviously that went well. And then Conan came back and got injured again just before November. And so it went okay, you'd say, in November. But there's probably a world in which they want to have a bit more dynamism in the back row and that incredible jackling ability added to your second row. And so Tadhg Beirne goes back to being a second row and Conan comes in, what would you do?
I think that's a nice way of putting it, actually, because to have them both on the pitch at any stage is the ideal situation. It's so hard to say, especially when players have been out injured. We cannot see what they're up to in training. And this time of year is always so difficult. Like I say, like all the speculation could be in the bin in a couple of weeks, or will be in the bin in a couple of weeks. But these conversations we'll have forgotten about because we'll have seen that one player, he has been doing his work behind closed doors, or he has been really performing. We can't tell how it looks in training for them. Also, they can't tell what they're doing in training, if what they're doing in training is working. We've been very lucky, I think, in Ireland to kind of been able to trust that what has gone on behind closed doors has worked. If you look at England, for example, for the last few years, with Borthwick coming in, and they couldn't tell what was going on behind closed doors, and then they came to the pitch and it didn't work. So we've been lucky that it has worked. So a huge trust in what's going on behind closed doors. To answer your question, what would you have? To have them both in the squad, and then who do you look to leave out then is a coach's nightmare, and something that needs to be managed really well. Like Simon Easterby has, he's been at the squad anyway for a long time, of course, but to have those decisions now come down to his head. Having Ger Colm involved is a real strength to Ireland's bow, to put it very simply.
I think that has an influence on the 6-2 split as well. It's like we have this collection of players who are explosive and dynamic and who will go up against the England 6-2 split. And I'm also interested in your thoughts on the psychology of England coming out and going, yeah, look, we beat you last year. I mean, which a lot of Irish people have kind of forgotten about. Like England, in most recent time, these two sides played, England beat us. And they're massive underdogs, really. They're 6-point underdogs. They're biggest 5-2.
Yeah, does that Twickenham though? Last year, that's the only thing.
Yeah, our record at Twickenham's fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be complexed about this game. Our head coach isn't actually in the coach's box. He's is he smuggling himself in like Jose Mourinho in the laundry? I
was Googling it to see if I could find a thread on Reddit or something what is Andy Farrell up to? is he smuggling in and dressed as a granny with a scarf over his head? I don't know. But I remember thinking this time last year, or actually even before the squad was announced last year, I remember thinking, do you know what? And I'd seen kind of how England were going last year. We're building into it, especially coming out of the World Cup. You know what? If we lost to England in that last game, it wouldn't be the worst thing for Ireland. But the hat I had on was that it was because we were blooding young players. So if we lost a game here and there, because we had a young, not fully young squad, but more younger players than we have currently. Because, when you look back at the squad now and there's only one star in the whole squad, and that's excluding the development players or the development squad members, whatever title they're given. One player with a star next to his name. So when we define success, and last year when we did finally lose to England, I was like, I said I wouldn't mind, but actually I wouldn't have minded if we had younger players who were here to learn from this experience. Coach, hear you talking about beforehand, are we prepping for the World Cup or not? To measure success, what will that actually look like for Easterby this time round? Yeah. Because the squad is so experienced, really, the only measure for success here is winning another Six Nations. Whether it's Grand Slam or not, I don't know. But Six Nations, they kind of have to win now, because there's not, if you lose and you have a young squad, it's not a loss, it's a learning element. We're going to learn from it, we're going to move forward. But when we look at this squad and we step back and say, how many of these players have the potential to take these lessons, form them into something, and then outperform their 2023 World Cup self?
No, it's a very good point. Like, there's no excuses with this squad really. The only thing is that their head coach is physically not there. We don't know how much he's doing behind the scenes, and it's what Tyg Furlong is missing for this first game. But that's really it, Anna. Like, that is the thing, isn't it? Now, the other thing is history's on the line since the Six Nations reformat in 2000. No country has won it 3 times in a row, so there is that to chase. But kind of per our first conversation at the start here was like, kind of, so what after a few weeks, isn't it? Like, that's the thing. It's like, where is this all building towards? What do you think's going to happen on Saturday evening? What's your prediction?
I think Ireland will win. I think they will. It's in Dublin. I think England could come up with a really tough front. Let's see how much kicking comes into it. I trust Ireland's back three massively, even whether it's going between the 4 players we've discussed or the 3 on the wings even. Any combination of those 3 I trust massively. And I think it could come down to then how much of an aerial game, how much of a kicking game, territory. It could be not the most exciting game in the world because both teams are tentative, or all bets are off. Everyone breaks loose, and you get this curry sandwich, as I've been calling it, just absolutely running riot and kind of gets under Ireland's skin, and they don't know how to deal with it. That's worst case scenario, but I think Ireland, especially after being a little bit disappointed with the Novembers, especially word coming from Portugal that it's been going really well, I think Ireland will hold on and will win on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the results recently. Like, England gave New Zealand a much better game than we did in November. Would you say we're stronger now than we were in November? England beat us last year. I just think we're kind of, as a bit in the analysis, sleepwalking into, should we always beat England these days? And then actually we don't really, I mean, obviously.
I know people are wary of this game. They're well aware of what happened last year. I know there's definitely an edge heading towards this game. I don't think people are taking England for granted at all. Like, and per Anna's prediction and the answer, and it was like, there was the hesitation, and it was like, geez, I don't know. And I think that's kind of a good synopsis and reflection of the country. Like, I think Ireland will win, but it'll be tight.
And when we look at what Ireland are capable of producing, if we look at both teams at their best, it's Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen us play our best. It's the France game last year.
I do think they're better than what they were in the Novembers.
I hope that's right.
Well, look, Australia beat England in Twickenham, and then we beat Australia in Dublin. And if you're going to go by that form, it was like, I think I agree with that. It's like we should beat England, but you look at England's side. Like Ollie Slade home was brilliant in November. Doesn't make the squad.
We were a bit fluky to beat Australia on the day, and Australia were a bit fluky to beat England on the day. No. Like, there's that's the break of a ball. I'd say those two things are basically the same. On the back rows, the Curry twins, what do you expect from them?
I think they'd be excited to play together as brothers and like edging each other on and pushing each other on. They both have potential. Like, they're so disruptive in the Premiership and in their club sides. Like, Ireland will need to be, if you're gonna look to kind of keep the ball alive at any stage, you've got to be super careful, because any of those, plus Mario Toji, are lurking around to pounce on any bit of a break between the ball carrier and the support and the supporting player. And if you give an offload to kind of try and get in behind the defence, you've got to make sure you're on his tail, whoever the ball carrier is, because that's the danger with them. There's such noises at the breakdown. And going on, let's see what kind of defence Ireland or England, pull out of their hat, like huge line speed, huge fitness, work rate. How do you kind of keep them at bay? We'll see. But it's exciting for them to play together and kind of make it this curry sandwich, like we're calling it with Earl in the middle. Could be a nightmare. Could be a nightmare for Ireland.
I mean, the tabloid headlines write themselves at this stage, right? Anna, great stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads. Enjoy it.
Cheers.